Are you saying we don't have enough metal currently, or are
Yeah,
you saying that even if you factor in all the deposits that haven't been extracted yet, there's still not enough?
there's still not enough. That's what we're getting at. You could put a dozen or 15 or 20 deposits in production that are known out there, these small ones or bigger size ones, and we still need another 50 more on top of that.
Our next guest is Shawn Ryan, a veteran prospector who's been involved with mining and geology and prospecting for decades. He's been honored with the Yukon Chamber of Mines Prospector of the Year in 1998. And he's been involved with the new gold rush. We'll ask him about what exactly that is. Welcome to the show, Shawn. An honor to host you today. We'll be talking about not just the mining space overall, but also lithium, and in particular, a very interesting project, Eureka. Welcome to the show, Shawn.
Thank you, David.
Shawn, tell us a little bit about yourself first, and from your early days prospecting leading up to the new gold rush in the Klondike region to finally how you were awarded the Prospector of the Year by the Yukon Chamber of Commerce. Tell us about your career and some of the highlights that you're most proud of.
Well, it pretty well all started when I really become a prospector was back in 1996. I ironically, I've been working in the exploration since 81 in the Timmins camp. And that's where I kind of cut my teeth working for the majors on their exploration crew. But in 89, when the actual market crashed and the super flow through crashed in the Timmins camp, we ended up going, actually, ironically, we became a commercial mushroom picker in the bush in BC for about 8 years. And then we actually tapered into being a prospector in 96 in the Yukon. And the whole point is we were looking for, at the time I called it Sasquatch. We had all this 20 million ounces of placer gold, but no hard rock basically ever seen. And the idea was, well, let's try, and go looking out for the mother lode, as people called it at the time. So that's how we kind of started, but we were pretty broke. And as a poor prospector living in an old tin shack. Yeah, and then we just plugged away, like Bre-X hit in 97, so everybody left the bush. And then we kept plugging away, and we staked some of our first gold, basically, projects in 2002, when gold was $280 an ounce. And knowing that gold's got to come up one day. Yeah, and then we developed basically a better problem with the Yukon was there's no rocks, but lots of soil. So if you're a prospector banging on rocks and there's 2% outcrop, your probability of finding nothing is pretty high. So we ended up turning into deeper soil programs, like a deeper soil sampling technique that led to the discovery of 2 to 3 deposits.
Yeah, I mean, you were credited for starting what was called the second gold rush in Yukon. Just looking back at history, how was this period different from, let's say, the first gold rush in Yukon many, many years ago?
Well, the first major gold rush was like in 1896 or 98. And so, that led to all this placer. But really what I was doing was, I said, we got all this placer gold, and like you have some creeks 6-7 million ounces in Bonanza, and no hard rock source found. If this was Timmins, where I come from, it would have been Swiss cheese with drill holes all over the place. And there was hardly a drill hole in the creek itself. So that kind of showed me that there was lots of room here to prospect. But really what it was in 2010 that really got everybody rocking and rolling up there in Yukon. We made a discovery on the White Gold Project in 2008. That was the first drill holes drilled on it. So once we made that, that was Underworld, they made that discovery. 2 years later, I had another project called the Coffee Project, 15 miles away. And Kaminak picked that up and drilled the first hole in 2010, the discovery hole there. So the White eventually turned into, well, right now it stands at 2 million ounces. But the Coffee, Kaminak, with those first few holes, lit that thing, like the district started turning, like people started realizing, well, if this kind of poor prospector type guy could go out in the bush and find these things, well, why can't we? So that kind of led to this big kind of people scrambling to get up to the Yukon. At the same time, there was a company in the eastern Yukon called Attack that made a Carlin-style discovery. And then that set the whole country on fire up there, the Yukon. and there was about $500 million raised in 2 years just for the district. So yeah, it was an interesting rush, but it was it's calmed down now since. But the point was that these beasts, basically existed, these type of deposits.
Are you still finding deposits at the same rate as when you
Well,
first started in your career?
well, this is why I left the Timmins camp, because now you're looking for gold 1,000 feet below surface. But in the Yukon, we're still finding them on surface. So that's kind of the cool thing. And so that's what you kind of have to do from an exploration. It's like hunting, and I'm a hunter trapper, used to be. So the idea is you have to understand your techniques to hunt with. So up in the Yukon, because everybody used rocks most of the time coming from the shield, there is no rocks to look at. So you had to come up with the soil sampling technique. Same thing with Newfoundland. There's enough rock there, but deeper soils are working there. So in certain parts of the world, you have to apply a different technique, and then that leads to a better probability. Because as someone told me at the beginning of the game, this is the only game where the norm is to fail. So you have to understand, how do we increase our odds in exploration so that we could, walk away from targets that are not valued and find the ones that are worth the money.
Generally speaking, do you think going forward, all-in sustaining costs for producers will go higher, stay the same, or go down?
Well, we know that it's getting more expensive to do exploration, the whole industry, literally. And we're running in our biggest problem in this whole industry is going to be lack of quality manpower. And I'll give you an example of that. Helicopter pilots, part of the world of exploration. 3 years ago, we had 2,400 registered pilots in Canada. This year, we only had 800. So, and out of 800, there's probably only 400 that know how to move a diamond drill with a helicopter. So, we're going to run out qualified, good exploration type geologists. They're a unique character in there. Yeah, a lot of people could do desktop, computer stuff, but who could actually go in the field and map? So we're running out of some of these key people for the future. So that's going to drive exploration costs even up further, because some of the diamond drill guys were able to get, I heard, $1,100 a day last year because there was no qualified diamond drillers. So inflation has really hit our world, but so it's not gonna be cheaper to do exploration here.
You've had a very long career prospecting gold, as we've just discussed. At what point did you decide to transition and pivot into lithium?
Well, lithium, I didn't think there would be a commodity like that because copper and lead and zinc, silver I've done. But when lithium come up, it was an interesting, the demand for lithium to fulfill, this is what we got to figure out as a society. Just because we want to go green doesn't mean we have the capability from a metal point of view. And, we're basically we're getting harder and harder to find these deposits, and we need the metal more and more. But there was someone that basically, when I was, that kind of tipped it off and said, the commodity cycle goes up and down. Copper goes up and goes down, same with gold. But with lithium, because of the crazy demand that they put in, and you need about another between 50 and 70 deposits in North America alone to fill the void, and the American government's starting to finance a bunch of these companies, or at least back them up, that they turned lithium from a commodity to an industry. And that's when I went, whoa, that's a different thing here, because it's a little going to be more sustainable. And the other unique thing is we've never gone looking for lithium. And the whole point was is they did in the 50s and 60s, but we kind of thought there was enough lithium in Argentina and Chile to fill our void. 10 years ago, everybody thought, okay, there's enough. But with this made in America stuff, slogan that they want it local, and everybody's starting to nationalize these kind of minerals, that started making me think more. And then the idea was, I said, okay, well, if nobody's ever gone really looking for lithium, or we didn't pay attention since the 50s, there's a high probability that we should be able to, we're starting from surface versus copper, you're looking, 300 or 400 meters below surface. But lithium, if we're just looking for it, it's kind of like a quartz vein. It stands out. And the Patriot guys on the Corvette, deposit is proof in the pudding of that. These things, you could see them from Google Earth, those outcrops. So because they're white, they're standing out above the ground. They're very silicious. So that's when it dawned on me. I said, well, wait a minute. There could be a lot of potential in this. And my expertise is greenfields exploration, looking outside of the box, outside of everybody's, or instead of tying on to boundaries, I look for new districts. And once we started picking apart the Quebec database, they have a really good, basically, database. The lakeside samples is an old technique we used in the 70s to look for copper. It found deposits. Then in the 80s, they used it to look for gold. It found gold deposits. But after you exhaust that for them metals, you move on to a different technique. But lithium, nobody's ever really used it to go hunting for lithium. Hence, the Quebec database had a really good lakeside database that shows a very good, like they got 135,000 samples. It almost covered the entire Quebec province. So you could cherry pick and filter and look at the best lithium, rubidium, cesium, basically geochem in these lakesides in the right geology with the pegmatites. So now you're starting to increase your odds. And there was still a number of these targets left to pick up. Yeah, and then because it's paper staking, you could actually start picking up the claims on the computer. And Quebec has a really good assessment. You pick up the claims, they're good for 3 years before you have to do assessment. And then it's quite inexpensive to even hold the claims. So it was, we're always gambling, but those were good odds. And hence.
What do you mean when you say no one's looking for lithium? I mean, lithium is currently being mined extensively in South America. The Chinese are one of the top producers of lithium.
But nobody's really gone hunting in North America heavy. That was the thing. Yeah. And it was this kind of the war in Ukraine and Russia. People realized, well, we're not getting that nickel from Russia. So that's when everybody started realizing that metal is strategic. Like we need it. Like we all think if we sell, copper to China, that if you get a microwave back, that's a good deal. But if they need their own microwave, then you've lost that supply. So this is what lithium turned into North America. They wanted lithium in America where they could basically, control that resource. So that's why pegmatites became so in all of a sudden, because we thought all the brines in Argentina and Chile were going to actually cover our bases here for lithium supply.
Why is it that you think lithium hasn't been explored extensively in North America yet, as compared to other continents that I've mentioned? Is it just lack of investor interest, lack of interest from the miners, lack of deposits? What is it?
Well, I think the beginning was 10 years ago, everybody thought there was enough, even like the people in Canada, like from Toronto to Vancouver, the investor types, they were all investing into these big brine deposits in Argentina and Chile. So we thought we were covered with the lithium supply demand because it was quite cheap to produce lithium over there, and they were big, basically brine deposits. But there was a switch that happened in the last year and a half, and it was part of the Australians coming over because they were putting some of these pegmatite type deposits in production in Australia, and it was really those guys did show up about 2.5 years ago and started picking up some of the old lithium showings that were basically in Quebec and Ontario. And that's how that thing, so they got the first round of good projects. But those were the old showings that people had stumbled across looking for gold. Now, we still need another 50 to 70 deposits. So where are we going to find them? We're not going to find them. We got to start looking outside of the box. And hence, but yeah, nobody's really, we noted pegmatites. It's like a quartz vein. Oh, there's a quartz vein in the bush as a geologist, but they never sampled it for gold. So pegmatites are like that they noted pegmatites, the geological surveys, but they never assayed them for lithium. So that's why this is the kind of a unique little rush, because you're the first person to go sample these pegmatites for lithium in a lot of places. Well, in most places.
The Biden administration is investing heavily into critical metals, including lithium. One of the projects is awarding $2.8 billion for all projects to boost EV battery manufacturing within North America. Is this investment from the government, at least from the U.S. side, do you think it'll translate directly into higher lithium production?
Well, it's coming into the exploration field because some of the companies that are being backed by the Americans are looking to invest in other juniors in Canada. Yeah, and we're seeing that basically where these guys are doing joint ventures with them, or basically taking share positions. So the big thing is we from the discovery, like this is we're going to hit a wall here, and like in North America, that we don't have enough deposits. And even if you find them tomorrow, it still usually takes you 7 to 10 years to put them into production. And so it's an interesting like dilemma we're in as a society that, yeah, we'd like to go green, but we don't have the metal to do it right
Why
now.
don't you think we have enough metal for this? Well, first, let's talk about the demand side. Realistically, how much do you expect demand for lithium to grow in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like I just read stats, like you could read the stats on the internet, like and all the companies are putting them in their their presentations. But there's a to like and that's what I'm taking the data from some of these research groups that they're saying they need another 50 to 70 deposits. Even if we have a dozen to 15 coming on stream, we're still going to need another 50 to 70. So if that's the case, then we have to get to the bush and beat it, like start hunting and find these, basically to see where these things exist. But we kind of got caught, and that's why I'm getting at, like with Mexico nationalizing their lithium there, and I think I'm not sure if it was Chile that were basically talking like that, if they've done it already. So what people are realizing that they need the metal more local, and so that's hence why they're trying to set up these battery plants in the states and northern Ontario or southern Ontario. But it's just the demand for the metal, and nobody's really gone to look for it. So I kind of look at it going back in time, because the metal, they could be under the swamps, but where we went to up in northern Quebec, where I staked a bunch of ground, there's more rock exposure. So you could walk the ground, it's relatively flat, and you have a better visual indicators instead of working in the swampy tills of central Quebec. So there was a different hunting technique, and that's hence why we went north, because they had great geochem data, and they had more rock exposure.
Is lithium a byproduct of another metal?
No, no, like lithium in pegmatites, it's the metal. Like it's usually lithium, tantalum, cesium. They call them LCTs. Like tantalum is very small compared to lithium, and then cesium is like you'll get percent, like you're hoping to get a percent plus in lithium, and then tantalum could be down just to a 100 ppm, which is a fraction of that. So
Right. So let's suppose that you're right. There's going to be some sort of deficit in lithium going forward. What's going to happen to the industry? Are we either the price is going to skyrocket, or the industry has to thrift somehow and not use lithium in their
well
battery,
that's
transition
well
to another type of battery?
that's
Yeah.
what that's exactly what happened, right? Lithium went to $80,000 a ton or something last year. It's come down, but yeah, the price is going up, but we still need enough volume of the material to make the batteries. So I don't know how, like personally, I don't think they're gonna have to invent something else here going down the line. Or, some of the guys are grabbing it from these oil brines and trying to produce it that way. That's a very low, basically, but there's like tons and tons, like they could extract it out of these low grade brines from these oil wells. So that's one way they might try to jump this. But either way, we don't have enough metal to go. Let's just say I'm not selling my diesel truck anytime soon here, because they're not.
Are you saying we don't have enough metal currently, or are
Yeah,
you saying that even if you factor in all the deposits that haven't been extracted yet, there's still not enough?
there's still not enough. That's what we're getting at. You could put a dozen or 15 or 20 deposits in production that are known out there, these small ones or bigger size ones, and we still need another 50 more on top of that.
Man, there's not 50 deposits out there in North
No.
America.
So this is what drove this whole lithium rush in a nutshell, was that, like, because the price went up, and then they could project this future demand is going to be needed, like it's like a hungry beast, and we don't have that metal right now. And it's but it's a brand new metal to go looking for. Like copper, we've been looking at it for 3,000 years, right? Like, so it's kind of, lithium is brand new, but it's kind of a double-edged sword because we're starting from surface, like in Quebec, where they're looking for gold deposits, 500 meters below surface. Lithium deposits are still being found in Quebec on surface. So,
Well,
because
tell us about Eureka and what you found so far in Quebec.
well, Eureka is really it's still it's a basically it's a grassroots project, and what we found up there was really, it was a research project, and it's basically one of the biggest lake sets, not one, it is the biggest lake set anomaly in northern Quebec. So out of the 135,000 samples that the government took, and you throw in a few companies, their samples in there, it ends up that, they have the top, I think they have the top 3 samples in one property alone, right? So it's, and then they have the whole way that exploration works for LCTs, these lithium, cesium, tantalum deposits. It's in a zoning. So what you have is you have a granite at bottom, and if right when it leaves, the juice leaves the granite, there's actually barren. And once it gets, because it's hot, and once it cools down within 2 to 4 kilometers, then it starts to dump out the metal. And it's usually in these pegmatite veins. And so the idea is that you're looking for that perfect, like basically 2 to 4 kilometer kind of window that Mother Nature didn't erode, because this happened, 2 billion years ago or 2.7 billion years ago, that event. So, but if we see that geochemical signal, we know we're still in that right environment. It's still sitting there. And so that's what we've located, was these kind of patches of big, broad geochem anomalies with the right geochemistry, but the right geology, with known pegmatites. So we know the event that causes the pegmatites, the veining, leaving that specific type of granite, are all basically in there. Now, there's a lot of pegmatites in a sense. So now we're trying to find, basically there's a lot of yellow ribbons around a lot of trees. So there's a lot of pegmatites. Now the trick is to find which pegmatites have the lithium. And that's what they're into now. So they did their first phase of work this summer and basically walked the ground on wide scale lines and actually mapped it geologically, because they could see the rocks, and they mapped out new pegmatites and different geology. And then the idea is to go in next year and start infilling, and then continuing this basically exploration.
And just to disclose and educate the audience, what is your relationship with Eureka?
Well, with Eureka, I basically compiled the data. That's what I do as a researcher. Figure out the probabilities of success or failure, and then come up with an exploration program. And then I sold them the project I take a share position, and I get paid some cash out of the deal. And then they take the project. It's 100% theirs. I keep a 1% royalty. And then they run with the project.
Do we know roughly the size of the deposits that have currently been prospected so far?
Well, there's no deposits. They're all just projects. Yeah, so there's no deposits. So this is, we call it greenfields exploration. And the idea is that it's a mining project, like it's a mining property, and they're big properties up there. And the idea is that, this is just phase 1 of the exploration. So.
Well, okay, so I guess for the layman who's not a geologist, can you explain to him why you believe there could be deposits on this land?
Yeah, so if you look at, especially if you go to their website, or, you might have some figures coming up, you look at the bullseyes. So what we just did is took the Quebec database, and took the best lithium, the best cesium, and rubidium samples. These are the indicators for the lithium type deposits. And we high graded the highest spots on the map on the whole Quebec area, and found these targets that were never staked, never looked at for lithium, because nobody was looking for it. They're remote, but some of them are close to the Raglan mine up there for the nickel mines. So they're close to port. Some of them are, within a couple 100 kilometers of a port, so you could ship it if you find some. And that's what these are. They're brand new, they're wildcat targets, but nobody's gone to look there. So, and now, like this is how we found the copper deposits and the gold deposits historically, 20, 30 years ago, was by going to these best geochem lakesides and looking for that metal. And so nobody's ever done it for lithium. So that's kind of, you got a little bit of science, like they're basically, you're taking a chance, but your odds are, you've increased your odds with this basically using better scientific data.
And when do you expect this to potentially reach phase 2? Do you have an estimate of the timeline or
Well,
not
what
yet?
they're going to do is they're just compiling now. They did their summer programs. So they should be having a bunch of rock assays coming in, and then they'll compile their data, what they seen in phase 1. And then the idea is to come up with a phase 2 program, which will be to go in and start detailing this, because it was more of a general regional program. And then the idea is that they might have to do some airborne drone magnetic surveys in there, get some infill, maybe start doing soils or a little bit of till, but there's not too much till to deal with in a sense. So they'll compile that over the winter and then hit the ground again next summer. But it was a good summer. Like it was their first pass up there and to understand how to work up in these remote areas. And I think they did a good job here on at least phase 1.
Thank you, Shawn, for educating us. And where can we learn more about Eureka?
I think you got to go to their website. That's where I would go, like in a sense. And
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Shawn. Appreciate your time.
okay, thanks, David.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow Eureka down the links down below.